This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, could you please start the recording? Good evening. I am Steve Knight, Chair of the Rome Planning and Zoning Commission. It is 6 p.m. on Monday, October 4th, 2021. I will call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Rome Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I will now call roll to establish our quorum. Steve Knight here. Thomas Cannon.
Present.
Rose again.
Present.
Christy Nairn.
Present.
Christy King.
Present.
And Sarah Haas is not here. Okay. Public presentations and input. The commission is not permitted to take action on or discuss any presentations made to the commission at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The commission will hear comments on specific agenda items during this designated time. Shannon, do we have any public presentations?
Yes, sir, we do, but after reading it, it might be better for it to wait for the public hearing. Is that what? So we'll wait for the public hearing.
Okay. Yes, we can take a quick technical break. We are froze again.
Frozen up again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you. I see you
Okay.
guys move.
Well, you're just sitting awfully still. Yeah, we're gonna restart that, so maybe we'll get you moving again.
Okay. Is that any better? Can't tell if anybody's talking.
Hear me, Tom?
Okay, now I hear you.
Okay. We were just asking about the minutes, if anybody had any changes or corrections.
Okay.
If not, I'll call for a motion and a second to accept them. You make.
Motion, yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We'll take another roll here. Commissioner Steve Knight, yes. Commissioner Thomas Cannon.
Yes.
Commissioner Christy Nairn.
Yes.
Commissioner Christy King.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That passes. Moving on to our public hearing portion, it is 6:04 p.m. on Monday, October 4th, 2021. I will open the public hearing on agenda item B, Rome Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct a public hearing to consider a request for a change in zoning of property being legally described as Acres 0367, Lot 4, PT3, Block A, Subdivision Grandview Addition, otherwise known as 360 South Main Street, Rome, Texas. This request is to change the current zoning of residential to retail. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to allow the public to voice and/or express any comments which pertain to this request for a zoning change. Anyone wishing to make a public comment when our City Secretary Shannon Montgomery recognizes you, to please state your name and residence and provide any relevant factual information which is pertinent to this application, and please limit all comments to 3 minutes for the purpose of maintaining the fluency of this meeting. Shannon, do we have any public input?
Yes, sir. We have 3 responses that are in your packet, and let me just read those real quick, and then I do have a presentation to read. Mr. Warner at 125 West Logan is in favor of the proposed request. Sarita Chalhugan at 360 South Main, she is in favor of the proposed request. And then Shane West Shane LLC, also known as the pharmacy, is also in favor of the proposed request. And those are all the ones that we received in the mail, and then I have one that was dropped off today. It's from Lisa Ann Wilson, and she's on First Street. I have lived here for over 55 years and welcome all growth, as well as other Rome citizens would. I would like to see our city have more planned retail. However, at this specific location, the lot seems too small and there is no parking allowed on the front of the lot, as well as the city making noises about requiring property owners to maintain right-of-ways and alleys. Before rezoning, let's see how this plays out. If at all possible, can the city tell us what type of retail? Also, the sign the city put out is way too small for anyone to see driving at 30 or 40 miles per hour. Should rezoning be addressed by the city for any location, please make sure that the sign is large enough with large letters so as to be read from the road. Thank you for your time, and please consider this statement when making a decision. Thank you, Lisa Ann Wilson. That's all I have.
That's all we have? Did we have one more presentation somewhere then coming up? Okay, just that one. Okay, thank you very much. Well, if any other comments to make, yes, please.
My name is Shirley Mize. I live at 170 Russell. I have the alleyway that's in the back of this property that is trying to be rezoned, that is not maintained by the city. I think that we need to understand how much extra traveling it's already going to get from this being retail. I don't think there's been basically a plan for the parking. There's no parking in front. It's kind of on the slopey hill. They don't use it now for any type of access from the front. They park in the back as a rental property right now. And I'm opposed to just going to retail for the fact that there's 2 homes, basically 3 homes in the area that you're going to butt up against with this retail property coming in if you want to rezone it. I, for one, do not want to live beside retail. I'm here to retire. I'd like to see that alleyway maintained. I've asked now for several years for that to happen. It keeps being ignored. There's big potholes, the water collects, there's dust bows, and I just think that we need to look at what we're doing to our city before we do it. If you're going to ask for a request, tell us what you're doing with it. What's the retail about? Where are they going to put the parking? I mean, we need to ask these questions before we move on to approve something of this nature. I do thank you for your time, and I do oppose.
Thank you. Do we have any others? Do we have the applicant here this evening? No? Okay, I forgot to ask that. Do we have any others?
Yeah, since we're not being informed what the purpose of the retail is.
Excuse me, sir. Can
Oh,
you please state your name and address, please?
I'm Randall Loftus, 315 West Morris Street, Rome, Texas. I'm concerned about the retail that's coming in also. We haven't heard anything about that. It was asked in the formal presentation, or that was read. My concern is that if you make this retail and this business is undercapitalized and they go out, what happens to the disposition of that property at that point? And all these problems are people that have lived here much longer than I have. I can drive by and see it myself. So that's my concern. Is this business really going to stand up? And what happens when that property is no longer occupied by a retail establishment? I am for growth. I am for growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any others? Okay. It is now 6:11 p.m. October 4th, 2021. I will close the public hearing at this time, and we shall move on to regular agenda new business. Item C, discussion and any necessary action considering a recommendation to council regarding a request for a change in zoning of property legally described as acres 0.367, lot 4, and PT3, Block A subdivision Grandview Edition, otherwise known as 360 South Main Street, Rome, Texas. This request is to change the current zoning of residential to retail. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Cynthia Northrup, our city administrator, for any background and staff recommendations.
Thank you, Chair Knight. Commissioners, you will look in your packet. There is an agenda commentary in there. And as a reminder, I just wanted to point out a few things in our zoning ordinance. It does give you guidance on how you should be making your decisions about zoning changes within the city. So you'll see them enumerated there in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just basically copy that straight from our ordinance. I don't necessarily need to read them all, but one of the things that you're looking at is it compatible uses with the area. The other thing you want to look at is our current zoning map and our future zoning map that is contained in our comprehensive development plan. So I do have them up here, and I think I probably have to share my screen. I'm kind of hesitant to do that because we've frozen a couple of times tonight. We've been losing internet in and out all day at City Hall. But this is the current zoning in Old Town, and you will see that all of the south side of BC Rome at the top of Old Town is all retail. And then both sides of the Main Street, and those are all the properties that abut Main Street, are all retail, except for these 4 properties right here, one of which we are talking about tonight. I have discussed this with the mayor, and of course there's questions about, the base zoning map and how this came to be. I have done quite a bit of research since I got here in 2020, and I can tell you that I don't necessarily know why this happened, but it is the way it is. When you look at so the property in question is not this southernmost property here on the west side of Main Street. It's the one just north of that. So there's 4 properties that face Main Street, and it's this property right here. Here is when you're looking at your decision making, you want to look at what our comprehensive development plan talks about. Is it in line with our future land use plan? And this is the future land use plan. It's all retail. Again, it's not that much different other than these 4 cutouts, again, which is a little bit incongruous. I know it's puzzling, and I don't necessarily have the answers. The other thing that the comprehensive development plan talks about, and we've had some conversation in the planning and zoning, you all have had some conversation about Old Town Rome and the recommendations to really capitalize on mixed use within Old Town. So we want to preserve those historical homes. We want to preserve historical points of interest, if you will, and you see here the mixed use downtown that is noted right here along Mill Street. This is Old Mill, and then over here. So that's what we have for our future land use plan. Some of the questions that have been raised tonight are absolutely great questions and valid concerns, but when you're looking at zoning, you're going to be answering the questions on the building site plan at a future date. That's going to be a separate process. You're not necessarily going to make your decision based on that, because I have had limited conversation with the applicant, but they're not required to tell us exactly what they are going to use it for. I mean, they mentioned a small restaurant. But that's all I know. They also talked about potentially buying the property north and really using both properties. Then they would have to replat. If they were going to do that, they would have to replat. But either way, they're going to have to, we do have ordinance in place where they would have to do a site plan, and they will be required to accommodate any parking that would be necessary for that, whatever use they decide to have. If it's a coffee shop or a donut shop or a restaurant, I mean, I just, they weren't that specific on that. But they would have to meet the parking requirements for that use. And that would be a decision, that we would have to address at that point in time. And staff, of course, would go through that process with them and then bring it to you all. So that's really what we have right now. Are there any questions that you all have on that?
Well then, Cynthia, the question of what they're going to do with it isn't relevant to our decision tonight on letting it rezone or not.
Correct.
And even the egress of it coming off Main Street or off behind the Logan. I assume there's got to be something in the ordinance that a retail would have to somehow come in off Main. That's really not a question for tonight, though, I understand.
Right, and actually, they already have ingress, egress, and keep in mind, Main Street is actually a TxDOT facility. So they're going to have to meet TxDOT requirements for ingress and egress to that property. Depending on how they do that property, I mean, they may have to do significant grading. I understand, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but they may have to do significant grading depending on what that site plan looked at. I don't know if they're planning on tearing down the existing building that's there and building new and putting it more towards the back of the property. That I'm not certain about.
Also, you mentioned that they're considering maybe buying the house next door. They would have to come back and have that rezoned also then.
They would have to have that rezoned, and then it would have to be also replatted at that point. So right now, what you have before you is a rezoning request from single family to retail. And you need to be looking at the what's around there, and is it compatible. The other thing I did want to bring to your attention, I mean, we're in a small city, and so we're kind of in that transition where we have zoning, but even though it is all retail, except for these 4 or 5 properties, it's all retail up and down Main Street. There's still legal non-conforming uses of single family all up and down Main Street. So once somebody is in a house, let's say they wanted to just convert that house to a business, they'd have to go through all the different, and they're in the existing retail. Once they start using that land as a retail or commercial, whatever that is on Old Mill, even this applies on Old Mill because that's commercial currently, they would not be able to go back to single family use. So right now, essentially what you have all up and down Main Street is a mixture of retail and single family, where the majority is actually zoned retail. And you have these 4 properties that front Main Street that remained single family.
Okay, and since I was lucky enough to sit in on redoing the city's comprehensive master plan, it was well talked about on what our goals were and what we wanted certain things to look like. And it was discussed, and it is in our new comprehensive plan, that Main Street was to become a retail, somewhat mixed-use area. Uh, And I think at the time, we all thought that it was already zoned somewhat along the actual border of that, for that, so. But that is in their own future plans through the whole process we did for a year and a half, getting public input and all, so that part does fit in with that plan. It does concern us, of course, that we're going to take 4 blocks and perhaps rezone just one of them. But we really have to keep ourselves focused on just what our duties are.
I have a
And
question, Chair Knight.
Yes.
On page 20 of 21 in our packet, there's a map. And so I'm curious, and I appreciate city administrator's diagram up there, but I'm trying to make sense of it on this map. Are any of the shaded properties the property that we're discussing?
I'm sorry, it was highlighted, but it's the R39073.
Okay.
That's north of West Logan Court.
Thank you.
And actually, there are 3 properties fronting Main Street. The other 2 properties, I think, is at Logan, that their entrance is on, the one beside the pharmacy. Yeah, Logan.
What I would just say on that map, and that is provided by the county. Shannon, you can, all the ones that are shaded, those are the 200 feet notices that we sent.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess my question is I want to know too, what is the retail coming in? It's just me, and I know we're not necessarily can know that, but that would make a big difference to know. And I drove by there, and I was kind of concerned about the drive going in there and the parking, because you got the houses on the side, but there's not really parking that's there, and then you don't know what type of retail that's going in there either. So it does raise a concern for me.
And I understand that. I do. It's one of those things where if somebody's zoning, they don't have to provide that information. And we know it's retail and we know what the uses are. If somebody's going to come in and try to they did volunteer that it was a restaurant, some sort of small little restaurant. I don't know if it's a sit-down restaurant. I don't know if it's a fast food, come and go. I really don't know, but that is going to be vetted out in the rest of our process when they come in with a site plan. And there's going to be we have an ordinance that tells them how that's going to happen and the requirements that they have to meet to do that. Again, I can see the concern on the ingress-egress meeting right now, but that could change depending on how they lay it out. They could do some topography work and change the whole lay of it. Make it different, and of course they would have to do a drainage study, right? So there's all kinds of things that happen after this step that they will be required to do so that we can address those concerns.
And so what about the other homeowners? The other houses that are there, are they going to end up being retail also for future?
In the future, now, the question was raised to me is, well, can the city go ahead and make it all retail right now?
Because didn't you say the whole thing was retail?
Yes, in the future. The future land use plan shows it all as retail. Okay. And right now, it all is, except for these 4 properties. So essentially, it almost all is, 90%. Now, the city could come back and say, okay, we want to go ahead and rezone this block right here retail. That's certainly an option. In a city like Rome, this happens all the time. It's done both ways. It could be done that way, or it could be done organically, where the homeowners will come in when they're ready to make that change or not make that change. But at the end of the day, right now, you have the like uses all up and down Main Street where it's mixed. You got retail, residential, even though it's all retail, it's zoned retail, but we've got legal non-conforming uses of residential all along Main Street.
Can you give us in layman's terms what that term means?
Legal non-conforming? Okay.
It sounds awful.
Yeah. So you can be, your land is zoned something, right? So when a city comes in and they're saying, okay, we're going to take a big approach to this and do it a macro approach, and we're going to zone, which Rome did at some point. And I've had this discussion with the mayor. I'm just not sure exactly when that was. And at that point, just because we went through the process, the legal process, to change the zoning, it doesn't mean that the use of the land has changed. And so when you're in that position, all of those people that had residences all up and down Main Street, where it was one fell swoop, zoned retail, still are there residential, using it as residential, and they can. And they can do that for the next 100 years. Okay, but if they ever sell and say somebody says, oh, this is zone retail and I want to start investing in Rome because I see potential for retail in this area, whatever that is, and they do a a retail use, they cannot go back and use it as residential as it stands right now. And there's been some hiccups that we discovered today that I don't necessarily want to get into all of that because it kind of is it's stuff that we find all the time that we're trying to address. But that's what legal nonconforming, meaning you can continue to use it as a single family even if it's commercial, because look at all Old Mill is all commercial. Most of these places on Old Mill are single family, right? And so they're continuing to use it as single family, it's zone commercial.
How does that work with the appraisals?
Well, yeah, I will tell you.
Because that's different once it comes to the appraisal if it's zone commercial.
Yes, normally what you will see, but what the appraiser does when they go out, in most counties are this way, but appraisers will go out like every 3 years. Maybe it's 3 or 4 every year on site. In Wise County, well, in Denton County, it's every 3 years. They actually go on site. Okay, in Wise, well, it's a smaller county, so they may do that. In Denton County, it's every 3 years. They actually go on site. They do an appraisal, obviously, every year, but some of them are on site. And when they go on site, it may be zoned commercial. Like, let's say we were in Denton County, just for the sake of argument, and it's the 3rd year, and they're going out here, but they're like, okay, this is all zone commercial, but it's still residential in use. They're going to be setting that appraisal based on the use. Now, yes, generally speaking, single family is going to have a lower value, and a retail is going to have a little bit higher, and then a commercial is going to have a higher value. So if you're trying to sell your property, you want it to be, if you're single family, you want it to be zone retail or commercial to try to get a higher dollar for that property. Did that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Is Tom still with us?
Still here.
Any comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, thanks.
I'm looking again at page 12 of 21 on the agenda commentary. And so that list from the ordinances that we should really be considering. So I'm looking at number 1, whether the uses permitted by the proposed change will be appropriate in the immediate area concerned and their relationship to the general area and the city as a whole. And so I wrote a little question mark, like I don't know if that's, I can't say for certain that that's appropriate right now in the midst of the 4 homes that are sitting there, to have one of the 4 and it's not the end. I think I might feel differently if it were 2 on the end, but also in thinking about the presentations made tonight and the concerns with the alleyways and the concerns with the amount of parking there amidst, even though it may eventually turn retail, and that may be what the end goal is according to the city. Right now, we do not have, if you look at number 4, the rate at which land is being developed in the same zoning classification as this request. Like this is one of the 4. There's not a high rate of development there. And so I feel like we'd maybe be jumping the gun a little bit. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, we really still can't be too concerned with what they do with it as retail. They're just strictly wanting to change it from single family to retail. So that's really what we need to concentrate on rather than driveways and parking and all that. As I read these.
No, I'm sorry, Chairman. I'm not concerned with what they do with it as retail. I'm just concerned it says we should take into account the rate at which land is being developed in the same zoning classification and whether or not this change will be appropriate in the immediate area. And so in an area where there are 4 homes right now, family residential homes, to have one right in the middle of it doesn't seem to me that that would be appropriate. And then number 2 also says whether the proposed change is in accord with any existing or proposed plans for providing public schools, streets, water supplies, sanitary sewers, and we're not doing it to help upgrade that area. And even though right now we're not thinking about what they would be doing with the land, we do have to take into account if they had the land just as it is and they open the restaurant just as it is, because I believe that's what we would be saying if we zoned it that way. If we were to approve and recommend to council that the zoning change, if they were to put a restaurant, regardless of what kind of restaurant it is, I don't know that that's appropriate in this area and with the infrastructure there to support it.
Okay. Yes, I apologize. I do see what how you were spinning that. As I read these, several of them just keep taking me back to our comprehensive master plan and what the city's vision is for this whole area through here. It is a big concern that we're just talking about one of 4 properties that are in a block that is still zoned as single-family homes. However, at some point, the city's vision for that area is to become retail. And when it changes to retail, the way I understand this other deal is it can continue to be used as single-family dwellings as long as there's no retail there. Once there's retail there, then it can't go back to somebody living in it as a house. So I guess in all honesty, the person wanting this zoning change could come back and build that restaurant 2 years from now and live in the house in the meantime, and that's totally appropriate as long as it's not been changed into a retail setting. But that's probably not what they want to do, because I'm sure they're looking to make some economy on it. So, but as I read number 1, even number 2, and especially number 3. Now the question of number 4, the recent rate at which land is being developed, I'm going to refer to Cynthia on that and kind of give us a little better explanation on what guides that, what studies are done to look at that.
Well, some of this, and I'm going to go back to number one. So I hear Commissioner King's questioning and concern. And again, this comes to interpretation, and I'm just trying to shed some light on what you do want to look at when you're making that decision. But it is in the immediate area, and it can seem like, well, we've got 4 single family, and one of the middle ones is the one that we're talking about retail, but you got to back out a little bit and you got to look at the bigger picture, and all of Main Street is retail. The comprehensive development plan talks about a mixed use downtown area, and this is currently in the boundary. Of course, we talked about shrinking that boundary down. This would probably be one of the reasons why we would want to shrink that boundary down a little bit, but to try to say, okay, where's that mixed use going to be? But it's still, when you look at that area, it's fairly compact. So I think, when I'm looking at this as the zoning administrator, I'm looking at the current zoning all up and down Main Street and the future zoning for that area, which is all retail. If we had a situation where it was, here's retail, literally, not, retail, single family, then I could see that. But right now, I mean, to me, the 4, and this is, a subjective, objective view, I don't know, but, the 4 kind of stick out. I mean, and it did to me as I was working with this whole issue. But I understand that concern. But going back down to 4, the rate at which land is being developed in the same zoning classification. So how fast is the land in retail being developed? You do see some of that development along Main Street, because that's all retail, but not a lot, to Commissioner King's point. So, I mean, it's something. I mean, these are not easy things y'all have to make decisions on. I'm just trying to give you the information and give you guidance on how you should make those decisions. But at the end of the day, the comprehensive use plan does talk about a mixed use, which essentially, even with it almost all retail right now, it's still mixed use, right? Because we have a lot of legal non-conforming single-family uses in retail and in commercial. And that's what you have when you have a city that is in the stage of growth that the city of Rome is in. These things happen over time, and sometimes that time is, that growth isn't happening really quick. But sometimes it's what are we going to do to try to encourage that growth? Right now, I mean, it may be something that, needs to be revisited, but the comprehensive development plan isn't that old. It was just in 2019 that y'all went through. I wasn't here, but y'all went through that process, and citizens were involved in that, and you had that conversation about, okay, what do we want old downtown, old Rome to look like? Do we want to try to create a mixed use? And that seemed to be the consensus, because that's, I mean, you have it all over that comprehensive development plan, where it's going to be, whether it's a Main Street or whether it's a downtown area, that's going to be that mixed use. And that was one of the things, just a little bit of education. You were just coming on, I know, because I just got here and you were new in 2020. And then Commissioner King, I don't know if, I mean, you weren't on, but the P&Z Commission at the time, and Chair Knight, you've been here a long time, so you can probably speak to that as far as your vision at the time after the comprehensive development plan. You guys were already starting that process of saying, okay, let's look at Old Town Rome overlay. Let's start there, see how we can make that conducive to a downtown area. And then it's like, well, wait, we got to stop and back up and do a comprehensive development plan. And so you stopped, and then you got a comprehensive development plan, and that didn't happen like that. It happened over a period of a year and a half. And so you got the comprehensive development plan in place, and then P&Z was coming back and saying, okay, well, right now, the current map, and it's in your packet for Old Town Rome, you kind of wanted to start, in the heart of the city, was really big. First of all, not very definitive, number one, but also very big. And in fact, right now, it encompasses half of Crown Point. Well, is that really Old Town Rome? Is that, if we're trying to create a mixed-use downtown area, do we really want to include half of Crown Point? Probably not. So I think the P&Z at the time was trying to just say, okay, let's shrink that boundary a little bit more and then come back and we can start talking a little bit more when you go and you look at this future land use plan where they have the downtown mixed use area. We can start getting a unified development code that really spells out a lot of what that looks like. How do we maintain our quaint downtown area with a lot of those old homes with appropriate business uses? I mean, is it really appropriate to have I don't know, some retail or commercial use in a downtown area? There's going to be some that would be more conducive to a mixed use and some that are not. And those are the things you guys in the future are going to have to grapple with.
Thank you. As I sit here listening to your comments, it's very informative. And I'm looking at these 6 items on our factors. If you take them one at a time, when I read number 1 and it says immediate area, that's really not defined as number of feet or what. So immediate area could be just the houses next door. In this case, perhaps maybe that's the better way to look at it, but it really immediate area would be like across the street and on either end of them. They're on 3 sides already surrounded by retail. They've got a pharmacy right next door to them on one side. I don't think the other side's even developed into retail yet.
Correct. And if you finish that, is that immediate area and their relationship to the general area and the city as a whole.
Yes.
So there's 3 kind of factors there.
Now, number 2, I don't know how we put that into work here because that's really getting down to some of the nitty-gritty, what happens to it. Number 3, the amount of vacant land currently classified in similar development. There is quite a bit of land along Main Street that is empty that could be freshly built on, it looks like. Number 4, the recent rate at which land is being developed. That's it's got to get started somewhere in order to promote it. If we want some kind of boutique little restaurants or trinket stores or an antique shop or something in Old Town, rather than out on the frontage road and the highway, why you start somewhere. So, you can spin these 6 factors about any way you want to look at it. I will say that our duty here is to look at what conditions we are given to make our decision with. We don't really have to get ourselves too far into the personal, how are we affecting actual people's lives so much. I know we are, but until this gets past city council and they've ratified it, then they're really having to look at the more human side of it. We have a set of guidelines to go by, and that's probably more for us to do. A recommendation from us, well, we basically have 3 things to do tonight. We can recommend this for approval. We can recommend it to the council for approval with some changes, some ideas of ours, or we can recommend denial. It's got to be one of these 3 ways of doing it because that's the way zoning's done, I guess. So I'm rambling here and I'm still going back and forth myself. So let me just start down one at a time and comments.
Okay, so I'm wondering, thinking about the options that you just kind of laid out for us, and something that I heard the city administrator say, there is nothing really stopping the city from zoning all, even though they're currently right now residential, there's nothing stopping the city from zoning all 4 of those properties as retail. Is that correct?
Correct, and I was just, there's actually 5, but one of them fronts the other street.
the other side.
Yeah, but yes.
So
Correct.
I'm wondering if that might, in my mind, that might make it a little bit better to say this is, that to me would say this is the direction we're going versus a one-off at a time. It's still a hard pill to swallow, but to me that speaks to the growth and getting towards the plan that you want, the plan that the city has put in place versus the one at a time. I think I would maybe feel differently there.
Well, I think one of the logistics with doing that is what's before us tonight is we've got an application for one to be rezoned. We need to address it since that's where we did. At a later time, we could come back and discuss maybe doing the rest of them somehow, but that would be another whole public hearing, and it wouldn't be anything we could even discuss now until we put public hearings out and publications and go through that process. When you talk about doing it carte blanche, though, it does sound to me like we're taking a little bit of the information away from those homeowners and just carte blanche painting it retail rather than giving them, and personally, me as a homeowner, that's, you can look at it all kinds of ways, and several of them are not looking at them favorably. But when you look at the long picture, I think it's probably for those up and down Main Street that are already zoned retail, but yet they're using it as their residence. Most of them probably have to know that if the time comes and business came along and looked at their property and said, I got to have this property, and they offer them some enormous amount of money, then it's been a good thing for them. If it's a piece of property that's been in their family forever and they want to stay there until they're not there anymore, then yeah, you're looking at people's lives. So it is a tough decision. However, most of that decision I feel like is going to have to lay on the feet of our city council. They are the elected officials. We as a P&Z commission are strictly a recommending commission, and we kind of go through the legalities, the information gathering, the discussions, public hearings, public opinion, and make our decision based on that. When it really comes down to whether it happens or not, those elected officials are the final say so. That's why they're the elected officials, and we're just appointed. So I will say that. So that's enough rambling for me. We'll move on to Christy and let her.
Well, I agree with Chairman King on it. I would rather much all 4 of them be just retail instead of just one individual being retail, because we don't know. My thought is that we don't know what's going in, and it's going to affect the other homeowners there. And I know we don't have the right for any of that to even, we have to go by the guidelines and do what the guidelines say. But I'm much for just all 4 of them being turned into retail than just one individual being turned into retail.
Well, okay, the only thing I would just reiterate, and that's fine. The only thing I would reiterate that the chair said, I mean, you do have one before you, so depending on, when you do have somebody online that is here if he wants to speak, but I mean, a potential course of action could be, approval with a recommendation that the council go ahead and start the proceedings, take the next steps to make that whole block retail.
And that's what I would agree to, a motion for that, for us to put that in an agreement that would be done.
Okay, and that would be one way that you could do it.
And even at that, it's up to the council what they want to do.
Right. I mean,
But we do give them our weight.
Me to take those next steps.
Thomas.
Very mixed on this one because I agree all 4 should be done. But we have before us one person who has attempted to change it to retail. We can put the stipulation in it, I guess, but for all the guidelines and right now it's 50-50 on what I'm getting from the public hearing. pretty mixed on that one. I also look at the future. What we looked at in the comprehensive plan was to make that retail eventually. So it is part of the future of Rome. So are we just dragging our feet for now, or is it something that just needs to get started?
I'd like to make a motion, Chairman King, Chairman, Chairman Knight. Is that all right? I'd like to move that we reject this proposal and make a recommendation to the council that they begin the process of looking at rezoning all 4 of those properties.
5. The 5 properties?
Yes, the 5 properties.
Block.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I just
Yes.
need that clarification. Thank you.
Well, I don't know that I saw it in our guidebook that we can make a recommendation for denial with changes. That's,
That's, yeah, I mean, yes, you can deny it.
okay.
And then you're just making that recommendation for the whole thing. That would be inappropriate.
Well, I think what you said earlier was we could approve it with recommendation. So, but that doesn't mean you're going to go with the recommendation. That just means we approved it and saying that we approve it, but we are going to put in our recommendation. But the thing, I think what it is we don't approve it. I mean, we would if all 4 of them were there. You see what I'm saying? If all
Right.
4 of them were zoned.
Well, you have
So
to,
it's
you
a
need
ma-
to take action. Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor
Yes.
and we need a second, or it needs to die for lack of a second before we have this discussion. Sorry.
I second it.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion from Thomas? You still with us, Mr. Cannon?
Can we?
We're going to take a quick technical recess here for a minute and see if we can get Mr. Cannon back on. Mr. Cannon, are you with us now? Mr. Cannon, if you can hear me, try calling in on the phone real quick for us. Yes, we've lost you again, but I've got you on my phone now. Yeah, we rebooted here. Took a short break to reboot and everything so we could have you on here.
I'm trying to get back on.
Have you tried it by phone then?
No, I didn't get to dial in because I lost my whole computer too.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yep.
We can do it with you on my phone. I can just hold it up to the mic and you can be addressing them.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on on the item, it is to deny, a motion to deny with the idea that the city council needs to try and set up a plan to take action and change all of these properties to retail from single family. Is that correct? Is that the way you have it written down?
I have to move to reject this request and make a recommendation to council to look into rezoning all 5 lots to retail at one time.
Thank you. Much better said. Did you hear that, Tom? And we've got a motion in a second, and I'm getting ready to call a roll on that.
So let me just make this clear. So the motion was to reject it. So mine was to reject, but the council needs to make it all 4. Was that the same thing you said? Okay, so that was the same thing she said. Okay.
It's 5 lots, not
5
4.
lots. Sorry. 5 lots. 5 lots. 5 lots.
The motion and you seconded.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make clear. Yeah.
Okay, you understand, Mr. Cannon?
Yep.
Okay, we'll do a roll call here. Give me just a second. Commissioner Thomas Cannon?
Against.
Against the motion?
Yeah.
No, that means you're against it. You're not for the motion.
Correct.
Okay.
What she's saying is that it means that he is in favor of this request. Because
He's voting no to this request.
Yes,
He's
she's
no to the
voting to
motion.
deny the request.
No, you're going to have to explain. Are you voting for what the motion states or against what the motion states?
Against what the motion states.
Okay. Christy Narron,
4.
Christy King,
4.
Commissioner Steve Knight is going to have to vote also no, which makes us 2 and 2. Where does that leave us with this motion? Without a majority? Okay. With another motion? Well, that was the way my thinking was going. Correct.
So-
Yes. And
Is there not something in the event of a tie? No, it's not the city administrator vote. No.
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
if we had a full commission, we wouldn't have had the tie though.
So
It's
can-
5, so we're 1 short.
Can we do a motion of approve, but we have to have something in writing or whatever that there are certain things that have to be done?
We can't force anything on the city council.
Okay.
We can recommend anything we want to. And we can recommend it as strongly as we want to, but it's not.
Were
I know
you,
it's not nearly our decision. It still has to go before the city
Yeah, but I
council.
mean, we have no power to force anything on them.
were you asking for a stipulation for council or a stipulation for the property owner to follow?
Well, kind of for both.
Well-
I mean, but I know it's not my decision for that, so.
That was my thinking towards going with an approval with a changes that the city council strongly look at doing something with the remaining properties.
Mhm. Yeah.
Since this particular person has spent the time and money, we've had letters sent out. Those letters that did come back were all for. One of them was the property owner, but the other one was the pharmacy, and one of them was an owner within the 200 feet. So then we've had our public hearing here. We've had some on the other side of that coin. So it is a really torn deal.
And it really is. And I guess because my thing is, and I know I don't have say in this, but it's the other people that are around there. You know, when I drove through that alleyway, that's pitiful back there. You know, and for people to have to drive through there, but I
You
know.
can't, I understand what you're saying, but right now, I mean, the city has a policy, whether we agree with it or not, that they said they were not on that particular one, and that happened right when I got here. They weren't going to maintain Logan. I mean, Logan,
The
excuse
city
me, that
wasn't.
alleyway between
Mhm.
Logan and Russell. Is it Russell? Right, they changed that when I got here, yeah.
I'm sorry. Is the time for public participation?
No, it is not. So we really need to hold that down. And what happens with that alleyway is here and there with what's
Yeah.
before us. So
So I would say a motion of, with the recommendation that the city does what the city needs to do. As far as what you were saying on the road, I mean,
The other,
yes, the other 4 lots, because it's a total of 5 lots. So
So-
the other 4 lots.
so your motion is to recommend approval with the recommendation that the council consider taking action to make the other 4 retail as well. But that's going to be, just to be clear, that's going to be another process for those other 4 lots. This one would already go ahead, and then the process would have to happen.
That's why it's a concern to me, because I feel that they should all have the same opportunity before we say to approve one. But again, I don't know if that was
But-
her motion or not.
But I honestly feel that no matter whatever motion we go with, it's still ultimately going to be the city's decision. So it doesn't matter if we approve it or deny it. It still has to go before the city. And if they have all of their ducks in a row.
Excuse me, we have a motion. We need to see if there's going to be a second or if it's going to die before we continue discussion.
Okay.
we do have a second. I'll second that. And I believe now we can finish our discussion.
So that's really, I guess, the reason why I would approve it and just say approve, because whether or not we agree or disagree, it's still going to be ultimately the city's decision on it. I mean,
It's a recommendation.
it's a recommendation, and that's what I recommend.
And I feel like it's the right one. The reason I gave that a second, because that does exert our recommendation to the city council with some recommendations they need to look at along with it, some guidance from us, which is what we are for them.
And that's,
And
I think we really highly recommend that they turn all 4 of them into retail.
any more discussion on that from you? Mr. Cannon, do you have any discussion on that motion in a second?
Motion was to accept recommendation of number 4 retail. Am I understanding that correctly?
The motion is to recommend approval of application request and to make a recommendation to council to look into rezoning the remaining 4 lots to retail.
Okay, no discussion on that.
Okay, then we'll run down the list again. And we'll start with you, Mr. Cannon.
Yes, I agree.
Christy Narron,
Agreed.
Christy King,
No.
Steve Knight, yes. Motion passes 3-1. Future agenda items. If you think of something, you can always email it into the city secretary. Not open to the public here for that. Any future agenda items, Mr. Cannon?
No, sir.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Mr. Cannon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Christy King. Commissioner Knight, yes. Commissioner Cannon?
Yes.
Commissioner Narron?
Yes.
and Commissioner King. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. It is
7:05 p.m.
7:05. Thank you very much.